I'm live. I've never done a live stream before, so I like feel nervous. I'm like kind of jittery for it. I've always been intimidated by live streams. Part of it is like the tech aspect of it, and then part of it was just like, what am I going to talk about off the dome for super long? So I figured for this one, since it's partially a testing stream, like I have this mic, is it working? I have no idea. Like, is is this live stream going to disappear afterwards? I have no idea. So I figured I'd talk about something a little bit frivolous, and then I'm really planning a schedule where I would love to do lives like this once or twice a week, and I would love at least one of those streams to be more like a creative workshop. I'm thinking like Claire's Creative Corner, where we can all come together and work on our projects. So I used to do like the long form videos of me working for an hour. Hey, hi Martin. I used to do this where I would like work for an hour, but I think lives kind of take the place of that now. So I would love to do that like once a week. But anyway, so for today's video, oh, I'm trying not to like talk too fast. Like I said, I'm not used to this. I'm used to always having all that I'll get to at the end of this video. So I have stuff to show you guys. I've been going a little crazy lately. So we'll get to that. Let me know if you guys are interested in the whole creative corner idea. Like I said, I just really want a place where we can work on our stuff together. Like I'm still working on my book. So I could like kind of walk through that process with you guys, and then it'll be kind of an accountability thing because maybe I'll do like the Pomodoro timer on the screen or that we can all be on stuff together, like 45 minutes working, minute break, something along those lines. Um, yeah, a little painting or writing, whatever, like just something creative that maybe if you don't have accountability for, you're not going to get to it. So, yay, cool. And like I said, I want to do that at least once a week, and then a more chatty live stream like this also once a week. So, yeah, we'll da 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 da. Let's get to what I came here to talk about, what I came here to mess with. Also, let me know if this sounds okay. Like I said, I'm like kind of shooting in the dark here. Um, I wanted to talk about this was my grand idea for today is I'm gonna go through some the most popular romantasy characters, at least to me. I'm sure there's some that are super popular, but I'm not privy to because I haven't read the books or the series. But I figured I'd talk about some of A Court of Thorns and Roses, Fourth Wing, since I just read it, Shadow and Bone, maybe I'll throw in some others if I can think of it. And basically just talk about if they're a or red flag or a green flag for if you want to date them, you know? Hi. Oh, this is so fun. Like I said, I've never streamed before, so I'm a little and sorry if the camera keeps shaking. This we're testing a lot of things right now, but I this is really fun. Anyway, so I feel bad. I feel like I'm gonna be if there's a lot of guys watching, tell me if this is really annoying if I talk about fantasy dudes and whether they're hot or not. um, but listen, I asked ChatGPT for some good streaming ideas, and this is what it came up with. And I was like, well, cool. Thank you. Uh, so, first and foremost, how familiar are you guys with ACOTAR? Because it's probably one of my favorite book series of all time, and it gets dunked on constantly, and I love it so much. And it's one of the few book series that I've read twice. I know I read like Harry Potter. I've read Hunky Fantasy Dudes are a fun subject. They are one of my favorites, and I don't get to talk about them with people enough. That's a like one of the tough things with books is you it's hard to meet people that have read the same series and are as far along in a series or finished with the same series that you are. So, but ACOTAR is one of those where a lot of people have read it. So let's get into A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's such a fun, like, tons of hunky dudes in there, and they are a mess. They are all over the place. ACOTAR is one of those series, it's like Twilight to me, where imprinted on my soul. I love them so much, and I don't care if there's quality issues. I don't care if something doesn't make sense. I don't care if people think the characters are shitty or bad. It doesn't matter. I like it so much. It's just so incredibly fun to me. Um, so never got around to ACOTAR. I was busy with Throne of Glass. So Throne of Glass, I thought about talking about it, but I haven't read that series in so long, so it's probably been 6 years since I listened to the very end of the Throne of Glass series, so I just don't remember the characters as well, and it's such a big series and has way more characters going on in it, where ACOTAR more than that, but there's, like, the solid 3 core 3 books, the trilogy, so that's why it's just easier for me to glom onto those. You shave your eyebrows? No. That's nowhere near worth looking fucking crazy for a while, y'all. Anyway, so let's get into some of the hunks. So, first and foremost, we have like who's introduced in the series. So we have Tamlin and we have Lucian. And Tamlin is one of those guys where first he's a red flag because he's this is so hard. How do people live stream with everybody having so much fun? Um, can we talk about politics in here? Um, I guess if you want to, I don't know if anybody's going to respond to you. I don't know if this is quite the place for all that. But hi everyone. Wow, this is so crazy. I'm trying to talk about like sexy fantasy romantasy book dudes and I'm like overwhelmed by all this. Anyway, so first, we have Tamlin. So we're introduced to Tamlin, and he is a big red flag to me, mostly because he's boring. He's such a stick in the mud. And I remember the first book being like, Farah, what do you see in this guy? What is there to work with here? He kind of sucks. I guess he fiddles. And then beyond that, he's just so dull. And then I like him more as the series goes on because he turns into such a maniac and is kind of a uh, now granted, he kind of becomes a piece of shit to Farah, but he's like just instantly more interesting and then instantly more attractive to me. But uh very nice. Hi everyone. uh you're just busy, so I'm just gonna go on and on about some like I was saying, and that's, maybe that's a red flag on me. Well, truthfully, when it comes to fictional guys, the blueprint of like what my heart wants and what I tend to go for is Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So Zuko is one of my favorite fictional characters in the world. Avatar: The Last Airbender is just my favorite series. That is like what I consider to be the greatest work of fiction, of art. Like it is just everything. How that series makes me feel is what I hope to invoke in other people when I finish my book. I hope it's like somewhere even remotely close to that impactful. And Zuko, man, he did a number on me when I was younger. I just thought he was just the most attractive fictional character in the world, even though he was aggressive and a hothead. And now that I'm older looking back, I mean, he was a massive jerk, but he was just so cool. And I think the fact that he had to go through so much growth and learning and thank you. I appreciate the you look cute. I'm sure you look cute as well. But yeah, the fact that Zuko had to go through so much character growth and he like, learned and then failed and then had to sit, like regroup and rethink from all that. Anyway, he is just my absolute number one, just totally like everything. Every fictional character that I'm possibly attracted to comes back to how closely does he resemble Zuko. And that's a huge reason why I'm into someone like Kylo Ren. So if you guys remember the Star Wars sequels, the Disney Star Wars movies, which is crazy, they took up so much of my brain and just so much of my life, or I feel like just our cultural brain, like the whole Star Wars Disney thing was just such a phenomena, and then it died really, really intensely, very dramatically. And now it's just something that almost no one talks about. It's almost like a weird, like, oh yeah, remember Star Wars? Remember Disney Star Wars? Oh, I try not to. They were really bad. That being said, I love Kylo Ren. I love Adam Driver. Kylo Ren is clearly the Zuko of that Star Wars trilogy. And therefore, he is like a near perfect fictional character to me. He's also by far the best character in that trilogy. Like every other character is just a shell, is either a caricature or just nothing. Like they're just what am I trying to say? They're one note, right? They do one thing, especially later on in the series. Like Finn is just becomes the funny guy. He turns into like just a comedic relief character later on. And I guess but Kylo Ren and Rey doesn't really have much going for her either. You know, I like have wanted to do for so long. Let me tell you about a tragedy on my end. I wrote some Kylo Ray, what do we got? Raylo fan fiction actually like a few years ago or whenever the final movie came out. So let me see, 2019, maybe early 2020, exactly 2 chapters. And a few years ago, I found the chapters and I read them to my friends once when we were like around a fire pit drinking one night. And it was super fun and really funny. I cannot find those chapters. They have disappeared. I can find them anywhere in any part of my computer. Now I have a new computer and I've just accepted the fact that these character or these chapters are long gone. So it's really sad because I want to like talk about them with you guys, but maybe one day I'll get into it. I don't know. Maybe I should get into it now since I'm really trying to fill out an hour here. Or do I go back to talking about my red flag, green flags? Well, let's just say my my Raylo fan fiction starts where the movies end. So the I can't even remember what the last movie is called of that trilogy, but wherever the third movie ends, but Kylo Ray doesn't die. We have Ray Kylo Ren doesn't die. Rey comes and saves him, like gives him some of her force power to like keep him from dying. So then she has to go back to base with Kylo and everybody's celebrating because they finally won the war, but she has Kylo with him and so everybody gets really protective of her and Finn and Poe get really upset and think she's crazy and then Kylo Ren is really emotional because he knows that his mom has died and he wants to go say goodbye to her. And I think that's all I have for like the chapters written, but I wanted it to culminate into basically Firefly. If you guys have ever seen that show, oh, such an amazing show. I love Firefly so much. And I wanted like a Firefly esque adventure where it's Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo Ren, and they have to I don't know, do something, not that they have to save the world, but they have to go on some sort of mission, go to some sort of planet and work together. And then obviously Finn are very anti Kylo Ren. Rey is pro Kylo Ren, but she's also pro her friends. Like want there to be this huge conflict between them. Kylo Ren has to prove himself, but also he's way more powerful than these two other guys. And I have a very vivid scene of Poe and Kylo Ren getting into a fist fight on the ship, and it's awesome. So that's my Raylo fan fiction. Maybe one day I'll do more of an in-depth uh, look. I read fan fiction once for some videos, and it was really fun. My Avatar: The Last Airbender fan fiction, but it's I've gone through so many different computers over my life that I didn't have a good way. Like I didn't have a hard drive or a cloud to save all these things on. So a lot of my fan fiction has just disappeared into the ether, unfortunately, and I very, very rarely posted it. So, um, that being said, let's go back to talking about some sexy boys from romantasy books. So, like I was saying with Tamlin, not hot in the first book because it was boring, way hotter in the subsequent books 2 and 3. And even the fourth one, the Nesta Court of Silver Flames, he's way hotter just because he's such a mess. But I guess is he still a red flag? Yes, because he's emotionally turbulent and insane. So, yeah, Tamlin is probably overall a red flag, but he's not as much of a red flag as I think other characters in the series make him out to be. Like obviously Rysand and like the lads really turn, which makes sense. I mean, Tamlin betrays Farah. So obviously Farah and her new boy and like her friends are gonna be anti-Tamlin. But Tamlin does help in the end. Like in the last book, he does help her. So I don't know. I just appreciate that Tamlin still has some depth to him in a way that sometimes Sarah J. Maas, I feel like when she comes across characters and she needs them to be good guys, she stops giving them flaws. It's like I need the audience to like these characters. I need them to connect with them. I need them to know that they're the good guys. And so they don't get any flaws anymore. They don't get any morally gray issues. They're just perfect and wonderful, treat people perfectly and wonderfully, and have the utmost, the correct moral values at all points. So Tamlin is interesting because he is one of the few characters in the entire Sarah Maas verse that is actually morally gray, where we know he's not a bad person, right? Or a bad fae or whatever, but he's not bad because he does help Farah. He can be selfish and he can be hot-headed, and he obviously struggles with his emotions and especially his negative emotions. Like at least in the universe of A Court of Silver Flames, which I've only read once. And I'm not sure it's going to be something that I can go back to the way that I could with ACOTAR, because A Court of Silver Flames, frankly, there was just too many sex scenes. Well, actually, I have a lot of issues with A Court of Silver Flames. Main one being, I don't like that Nesta, who has always been the sister that is uptight, right? Everything about her, from her appearance, like always having this braided bun, like very like literally tight hair, and wearing dresses where the collar like goes up to her chin and covers her neck, and just being very like prudent and anal and difficult and severe, strict, which I liked about her. I liked that she was such a distinctive character. Like she was very distinctive from Farah, and while difficult, interesting. I always liked when she was on the page. So I was really excited when I found out she was going to get her own series. And then she gets it, and she's, right away you understand she's going through PTSD issues because of the war and seeing her dad die. And you're like, okay, this this chick is going through it. She won't, she's in this apartment. She's not talking to her family anymore or her friends. The apartment looks like shit. She's lost a lot of weight, like all typical things that indicate that really going through it and PTSD. Except the one thing is that she turned into an enormous slut. Um, and I never quite understood that, and not just and I'm not just saying that to, like, slut shame anybody, like, that is just factually what's happening. She, like, is having major one night stand after one night stand after one night stand, um, sometimes with multiple partners. I've never been Nesta when she was at her healthiest, and you're telling me that's just the vice that she's getting into? Like, somebody who seemed very, I'm not sure they've she's ever been like strictly characterized as a germaphobe, but you kind of get that vibe from her, like germaphobe or kind of OCD or strict. And you're telling me that she just is going to be sleeping around, like literally every night with a new Fey dude. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I understand maybe not wanting to have any emotional attachment to people, but that means that she's gonna have, like, rampant one night stands? It just didn't follow with what I understood her to be as a character. I think she would just be emotionally distant and not, like, definitely not be having any sex, definitely not be having any one night stands, not be going out. She would just be locking herself up in her home, not seeing anybody, and just drinking by herself. That tracks way more than going out to bars and picking up a new dude every single night. That does not follow. So that was my major thing with Court of Silver Flames, where I was like, this does not sound like Nesta. This does not read like Nesta at all. And then and then she starts having this like very casual sexual dalliance with Cassian. And one of the things about Akatar that I loved was having the back and forth between her and Cassian, the will they, won't they. And again, I think Sarah J. Maas struggles to really do a slow burn. She kind of wants us to know that these characters are attracted to each other pretty early on and makes it pretty blatant and obvious that that's what's going on. So, but with Nesta and Cassian, it was also one of the few pairings where like you kind of knew that's where it was going, but it was way better. Like it was way more well done with the will they won't, weren't that many interactions. And at the end, it was actually very satisfying that it didn't culminate into them getting together and then had feelings for each other and wanted each other to be safe. It wasn't like then they got married or anything like that. They still weren't even together romantically. So them then so it made sense that in Court of Silver Flames that Cassian would still then care for Nesta and want to go visit her and see how she's doing and all that. But then it turning into like, yeah, they're just gonna be friends with benefits and have all this rampant sex. And to me, it was like, okay, we're forsaking how these characters actually are, or like everything that we've learned about the characters from the other three books in order to fit in as many sex scenes as possible. And that made it nearly impossible for me to truly enjoy the books, even though there's like some interesting action and set pieces I really love and I still think about to this day. um Nesta and the Kelpie, and like that iteration about Kelpies and my Celtic creature lore series, which I have exactly 3 videos on, but the Kelpie is one of them, and it's like one of my favorite creatures ever. And there's a lot of fascinating lore about it, and it's usually in the form of a horse, and sometimes that horse transforms into a prince, and either way, it's no good, it's bad news. So it was really interesting to have like the most disgusting, grotesque version of that, where I think it was like partially a horse, but mostly just a gross, nasty, like almost partially dead dude just trying to kidnap Nesta and grape Nesta in like a really, I don't know, it was just so visceral, but unique take on the creature, which is one of my favorite things that Sarah J. Maas does because she does clearly read a lot of fairy tales and also likes monsters and creatures, which is one of my favorite things. My fantasy book leans very heavy into creatures. I feel like when you're doing fantasy, you either want to get into magic systems, world building, or creatures, right? I kind of think about that with D&D too. Like people either really want to get into like the creation of their characters or the world or the magic system. And I think fantasy books kind of fall into that same like what people are drawn to. And for me, it's definitely creatures. So I have a lot of fun with lots of different creatures. There's a tiny bit of magic. It's definitely more, it's not a hard magic system. It's a very, very soft, very subtle um, magic system. I kind of think of it as being like on the edges of the world, but not something that you directly interact with. And then world building being like the second thing that that the series that the book definitely like spends a lot of time on. Probably gives more time to the world building than to creatures, but I personally have more fun with the creatures and using folklore, like taking some creatures from folklore and then expanding upon them and making them my own. And something I've always liked and have been very drawn to Sarah J. Maas. And part of the reason I am such a stan for her work is that she does a similar thing. So she and I are clearly kind of drawn to similar aspects of fantasy, where you like look at folklore, look at fairy tales, and just kind of twist them into your own. I think it's creative and it gives you something to ground your creativity in. So, because you're pulling from partially from history, like folklore is kind of it's kind of a historical thing, right? It plants you in a certain time and place, very much a place and kind of a time period, like what folklore you can kind of follow, like very, very early folklore versus later, and how it changes depending on oftentimes how science advance and technology advance. And then you can see how the folklore changes with that. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get back to Lucian from A Court of Thorns and Roses, who I think is a green flag mostly through and through, basically until he betrays Farah. But in a later book, and even then, he clearly is torn on that. But one of my favorite things is that he and Elaine, so there's like when it comes to Akatar, right, there's the unresolved love triangle that they're probably going to explore in a future series because it's unresolved. And I think clearly Sarah J. Maas can go back and mess with that whenever she wants, is the love triangle between Lucian, Azriel, and Elaine. And I think Lucian, I keep saying Lucian, but it might be Lucian. I'm trying to remember what the audiobook says. But I'm going to say Lucian. Lucian, I think, is the bigger green flag than Asriel. I think, and I'm not sure the fandom feels this way. I think the fandom might prefer Asriel to be the one that gets with Farah because he's just part of the dude trilogy with Cassian and Rysand. And so people just like want like each of them to get the sisters. But Asriel, I think, is a much bigger red flag because Asriel is kind of an idiot and an imbecile, and by far one of the worst defined characters in that trilogy. So, first of all, he's really bad at his job. And it's crazy because the trilogy from the second he's introduced and all the way into even when he kind of pops up in Crescent City, in the third book of the Crescent City, when he pops up worlds, he's just horrible at his job. He cannot, and he's supposed to be the master of secrets and the master of shadows, and that he's a torturer, maybe. Um, he doesn't do any of those things, and he certainly doesn't do them well. Like when he does try to gather secrets, literally in Akatar or in the second book or third book, he gathers them incorrectly and then leads everybody into a trap. And that he does it multiple times. He's horrible at what he does. And he's supposed to be like, oh, he's this because he controls the shadows and he's darkening tragic. He just, is able to, which also is kind of crazy considering Rysand can read people's minds. So it's like, what is the point of Azrael when you have someone like Rysand and someone powerful as Rysand? But whatever, Azrael exists, and he's useless. he's completely he's and he's just also an idiot for being in love with Moore for the last 500 years. And it turns out Moore is a lesbian. And it's like, you're telling me you're the master of secrets and you can't figure out that this chick that you spend all of your spare time with and follow around like a puppy dog, who has been denying you for the last 500 years, is A, clearly not into you and you should move on from, is probably making her uncomfortable following her around all the time and begging for her attention and affection, and B, is a lesbian. You're telling me you can't like put those two things together? Master of secrets? Azrael is an idiot. Uh where Lucian. Now that I think about it, I'm so sure my audiobook says Lucian. Right? Doesn't that sound right? If anybody in the chat has listened to the audiobooks, let me know because I'm now starting to think that it's Lucian. He kind of role. He doesn't have the powers that Azrael has. The the smoke, the shadow power, right? But he's kind of Tamlin's intel guy, and he seems to be a lot better at it, right? He's like somewhat competent. Farah definitely liked him and trusted him more, and yeah, I don't know. I guess Lucian also, Farah was able to manipulate him in the third book, so maybe he's a bit of a dum dum too and is kind of gullible. But there's a sweetness and a gentleness to him that I guess I just like so much more than Azrael. I find him more of a compelling character, and we got more screen time with him than Azrael. Azrael is introduced in the second book with Cassian, and we rarely get any alone time with him. And because he's the silent one, we don't see him interact or we hear him interact with many people. Where Lucian, he was like one of the main characters in the first book. Farah spends a ton of time with Lucian, like almost more time with Lucian than she does with Tamlin. So I guess I like him. I like him a lot, and I wouldn't hate to see him more if we have more books in the Akatar world. I think that would be cool. I think I just like him and Tamlin as characters. And I think Azrael and Cassian, even though they're seen more, I don't know, you spend more time with them a little bit in the later books, but I think we spend actually way more time one-on-one with Lucian and Tamlin in the first book, so I actually kind of know them better than I ever get to know Azrael and Cassian. And speaking of, let's talk about Cassian for red flag, green flag. Well, he is a green flag for me because he's the hottest one. he's he's just, and again, this is partially I think because of the Zuko thing, the Kylo Ren thing, whenever the guy has a long hair and he has to put it in like a bun sometimes. I'm like, that's really cool. I like that. And there's a warmth in the fact that he's the funny one, he's the most lighthearted, he tells the most jokes. So that's just like in real I was around any of these people, I would most attracted to Cassian because he's funny. Even like I love my dudes that are dark and and sad and dramatic and my heart goes to my in my real life heart goes to like funny dudes 1,000%. I could not handle. I've been with guys that are more dramatic, that are less funny or goofy and more sullen, and I cannot stand that. I want to riff, I want to laugh, I want someone who's clever, I want someone who's interesting. So Cassian is definitely red flag all the way, as is I can't believe I forgot his name. The main dude, Rasand. Does anybody else think Rasan was like way cooler in the first book and like half of the second book? Basically, before he devotes himself to Farah, I think the idea of mates is like one of my least favorite concepts in the whole Akatar series. The only time I'm pausing because the only time I really like it is when Elaine becomes Faye, and then Lucian is then, oh my God, she's my mate, kind of against his will. That's when the idea of a mate becomes really interesting, where it's like, oh yeah, what if you guys don't fall in love organically? You know the mating bond is there. It's an idea I'd love for her to explore, but actually explore well. I'm kind of scared because now it's touched upon but not explored. And I'm kind of nervous that if Sarah J. Maas like puts her whole magnifying lens, her whole writerly lens on like that idea that what if the mating bond is real, but you're not actually in love with that person, you don't know or can be. I'm sometimes I'm unsure if I can trust her to deal with such matter head on, you know? But it is a fascinating, I think it could be, it was one of the most interesting plot lines, character lines, when that happened at the end of the second book in the Akatar series. But Rysand was definitely more interesting before that happened because once Rysand happened with Farah, once Rysand revealed the mating bond that he and Farah had, and that he knew that they had it before all of this, right? So he like before she was ever Fae, before I think even before she came into the Fae realm, he like knew that his mating bond was with her with a human or something like that. It's been kind of a minute, but he knew, and then blah blah blah. They're in love. They're in super love. They're in mega love, and then that's when it becomes way more boring and way interesting to me. I like slow burns. That is the most interesting of any relationship is the they, and even when it's like they will that there's still some like tension or difficulty. I don't want the I'm in love with you and I'll do anything for you and I'll marry you and blah 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 blah. Basically until the end of it. But until then, I want there to be some will they a tit for tat kind of thing. And Rasand and Farah, I feel like they reveal the mating bond and kind of gets ruined, which is very unfortunate. But before that, especially in the first book, when Rasand was being ah, awesome, he was being so cool because he's so like he's so dangerous and he's a dick and he's being super manipulative, and it's kind of crazy that she got away with this in this series, like that she was able to publish it, but I'm like thank god because it's one of the more interesting things. You know what's crazy with romantasy, jumping all over the place here, But I think about Akatar, and when Rysand basically magically drugs Farah, has her wear virtually nothing, has these like painted tattoos all over her body, has Farah dance sexy but under basically magic hallucinations, like magic drugs, and like dances sexy on him for him, and like she like wakes up and she can tell the like paint gets smeared all over her body so she knows exactly where he had touched her and stuff, which is crazy. Like that is such a crazy scene. You never get anything that crazy in other romantasy books. Nobody comes close to being that edgy. It's kind of an edgy thing. Like when I say it out loud, like, man, that is like scandalous in the context of the story, especially in the breadth of the entire series and knowing what happens and knowing that they get together and they're mated and he's been like protecting her the whole time, blah 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 blah. It doesn't, I guess, seem but retrospectively as nuts, but saying it out loud, I'm like, oh no, it's insane and I love it. And I wish that other romantasy, I'm like, if you're gonna be a romantasy, why not get that crazy? Why not have that much fun? But they, I feel like they take away the flirtation. And if you're in fantasy, it's like, well, let's have like weird fantasy flirtation, but they take away all of that. And instead, it's just, I don't know, like they just have some very modern quips back and forth with each other, and then they bang, and then they have like very normal sex, and then that's it, and then they're together, and then they're in love, and then that's it. Ugh, I haven't read any good romantasy in a really long time. um, I mean, if y'all know of any, especially slow burn ones, throw it in the chat or throw it in like a comment in one of my videos. But I can't think of the last time I read a romantasy that was as fun as Akatar. And this is where people, the very thing that people dunk on with Akatar is the thing that I love, that it's willing to be that out there and that crazy, or like in the second book when they have to go under the mountain to, or he hasn't revealed the and they haven't officially gotten together yet. And he's like, yeah, so they think I'm this dark overlord and that I'm super evil and I have to play the part if I want them to like listen to me and do what I say. But in order to do that, I need you to pretend to be a whore and be my whole like slave thing. And uh, yeah, that's so fun. Such a fun premise. And like obviously, and she's like pretending and she's kind of internally like rolling her eyes about it the whole time. Yeah, that's dope. I would love if any series came anywhere close to having scenes that were that interesting. Um, I'll pick my players' brains on Monday. I know two of them are avid romantasy readers. Yes, no, you should. That would be awesome. Let me know. Like I said, throw it in the comments of any video because I seriously I'm struggling. And then I'll like try to find forums and read people's suggestions. And I don't know, like I'm not able, the suggestions aren't lining up with what I'm looking for. And I do want something that's a little bit more sophisticated, and ideally well written and fun and fun, fantastical and sexy, sexy fantasy. That's romantasy. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Well, I've talked about Akatar to death. Oh, I included the Akatar women too. Like it doesn't have to just be hunks, right? It can be some baddies, it can be some babes. Are there red flags, green flags for our babes? Let me see. Farah, she's kind of a red flag. She's kind of a red flag. No, I mean, she's ultimately a green flag, but she's, like, kind of annoying. Like, I don't know if I'd wanna be with Farrah. And she's annoying in the sense that I guess the thing about Farrah is that she does have a lot of agency. She does a lot of action, right? So she's interesting in that way. But she's also kind of annoying. Especially in book. And it's something that for I know bothers people a lot to the point where they can't get through ACOTAR because they dislike Farrah that much. I don't feel that way. I like recognize that she's kind of an annoying protagonist, but she's in such interesting situations and then surrounded by such interesting characters. It just I guess doesn't bother me that much. And there are some way more annoying characters. Let's talk about Moore. Okay, let's talk about how what a red flag Moore is. Moore is one of the worst characters in ACOTAR, and like actually one of the worst characters that I know of because she's so kind of evil. The big reveal of Moore's past that stopped me. I think I had to stop, like actually pause listening because I was like, what the fuck did I just hear? And is she a good guy? And or we were saying this as if she's a good guy. So in case you guys don't know or don't remember, Moore, so you know that Moore is like kind of flirty with Cassian and Azriel, who she's been best friends with for 500 years or so. And then she is especially flirty with Azriel. No, she's especially flirty with Cassian because Azriel like actually wants to be with her romantically, and then she's kind of like, no, 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 and will run off. And does she and Cassian fuck? I actually don't remember. Can I say fuck? um, but then, and she at one point they go to like a council meeting, and then she sleeps with one of the other high lords, like the high lord of summer or something like that. And so you're like, okay, Moore's just she's kind of flirty, she's kind of slutty, but for whatever reason doesn't like Asriel. Maybe because she's actually in love with Asriel and she doesn't like the feelings would be too much, right? That's what you're kind of led to believe. And then in the third book, it's randomly revealed that no, she's actually a lesbian and she's in love. There's this woman that she's in love with who gets killed. I actually don't remember what happened. I don't remember if her lady lover gets killed or if she disappears but is still in the world. Wow, I literally just kind of blacked out because basically the second I heard that she's a lesbian and she just felt too bad for telling Azrael. Like the thought of telling Azrael that like no, we will literally never get together because um I like women and I don't want to tell him that because that will hurt his feelings. Was just so one of the most insane comments. I can't imagine being that cruel and that evil to somebody that is supposed to be my friend. Like, wouldn't you want to set him free? Like, if that's not a possibility, be like, okay, then you need to go. You need to go find somebody who will be into you because it's not going to be me. And then the whole thing too of her sleeping with a random dude. I swear, maybe I'm misremembering, but I'm pretty sure she did that just to have the facade that she's straight, but deep down she's still a lesbian. It is such that is like one of the worst character plot lines I've ever read, ever. Because some characters are boring, some characters are purposefully mean or purposefully cruel. This one was a woman who is cruel, and yet it's presented as if she's not, and that we should still root for her and that she's still a good guy. Insane. So yeah, Moore's a big red flag. Get her out of here. When did the genre take off? It caught me off guard with its popularity when those two and I were comparing reading lists. When did it take off? So I feel like I started seeing more romantasy. Well, okay. I read ACOTAR in 2018 because I had just moved to Columbus, Ohio. And then an ACOTAR came out in 2015, maybe 2014. So it definitely had been out for a little bit. And it had enough buzz that I didn't know anything about Sarah J. Maas. I did hear about that series. So it was picking up steam in that way. And then almost right after ACOTAR, I read The Cruel Prince because that had just came out and that blew up. And I hated The Cruel Prince. I thought that was terrible. Um, and I would say that romantasy kind of started, romantasy was not a term yet. Like if you go back to any of my videos from 2018, 2019, I never say the word romantasy. That is not a term that existed online yet. I would say 2020 was like kind of the COVID era is when it really started to pick up steam on on social media, probably just because people were bored and had more time to read and they were and when maybe they because they had more time they either had more start reading when they hadn't read in a long time, or you were an avid reader and but you had so much more time than usual, so you kind of go outside your typical genres. And that's when I noticed the term romantasy popping up and then it taking off online where people are only recommending romantasy because before it was always like fantasy with a strong romance on. Here's some romantic fantasies, more of an emphasis on the fantasy, the romance. And then I think 2023 just exploded, just absolutely took off. And I don't know if that was because maybe in part Shadow and Bone on Netflix. I mean, that's an older series that came out in 2013, 14, 15, something like that. But then that with like Six of Crows, the combo Shadow and Bone TV show came out. And then I just remember, yeah, that's when romantasy, you started seeing those words everywhere. And that's when Barnes and Noble started including it in their advertisement. Like you would go in there and they would be like, this is the romantasy section. And then you started seeing like every YouTuber explicitly review things or haul things that were romantasy. You started seeing more edits, like those shorts of like dream fantasy man. I think that's when publishers were like, oh, wait, this is a selling point. This is a strong selling point. People love this shit. So romantasy started blowing up just on a genuine, like on a fan basis, on a consumer basis. And then after 2023, that's when publishing houses, it became a top down thing where they were like, oh no, we're going to really into romantasy. We're going to acquire things that are explicitly romantasy. We're going to sell things as romantasy, hashtag romantasy, Barnes and Noble romantasy, blah, 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 blah. And then that's when it just, I mean, now there's like book boxes, right? That they send out like a box full of stuff like stickers and candles and books that are explicitly romantasy. You can see like fan art and I mean, yeah, everyone knows. It's inescapable now. I have a video that's kind of blown up lately talking about if romantasy is like a virus in publishing and in the fantasy world, not because it's inherently bad, but because the terminology and the tropes have just been abused to death. And people aren't taking the time to even make quality, like true quality romantasy. They're just taking tropes and putting them together and slapping romantasy as the genre on it and then peddling out to avid readers who just eat it up, you know? It's very frustrating. I love the idea of high quality romantasy. That has not been a thing for years. It's been almost like the equivalent of like AI slop, like just really quickly produced, but poorly done and clearly cheap and kind of bad. Okay, I'm gonna go through a few more characters, but I have some books that I have to show you guys. So, um, let's go through. So the sisters, I think, have I talked about Nesta? She, in A Court of Silver Flames, she kind of becomes a red flag for me, but otherwise she's a total green flag because she's such a bitch in the other two series. But she's so distinctly rude. I don't know. I just like her. I also kind of like those kind of people. For better or worse, I am drawn to people that are kind of cold and distant. I don't know why. I just always have been, both for friendships and romantically. And then Elaine is a red flag for me because she's so boring. I hate boring. I will take bitchy but interesting over kind and boring any day of the week. I can't do it. Especially the really like sweet, soft, gentle. Not for me, not interested. And then there's Armrin, Amrin, Amrin. Um, she's a green flag. She's super highly competent and powerful. Also distant and cold and calculating, much like Nesta, but with much more of a restrained edge. I would say Nesta is willing to be much more cutting and actually rude to people when she speaks to them, where Amryn is like she knows that she could destroy the world at any point in time if she really wanted to. So she like doesn't need to be as vicious. She can be like a little, like smirky and a little wry, but not cruel in the way where Nesta can be actually cruel. So actually, I don't know why I hesitated. Um Amarin is a total green flag. She's awesome, actually. I really like her. And then I have some notes, but I'm just going to go through them quickly because I am almost at an hour for this live stream, which is crazy. I was like so unsure if I would be able to fill an hour's worth of time. But I forgot that I love to talk and it's my favorite thing in the world. So I just read and have a whole review on Fourth Wing, the phenomena that is Fourth Wing. It is an undeniable phenomenon. You go into a Barnes and Noble or any bookstore, I was actually just in a bookstore today, and the way Fourth Wing has exploded still blows my mind. And if anyone has finished Fourth Wing, the first book left a lot to be desired. The first book, both in prose and in content and in character and in like world building, I don't get it. I really, well, I'm being a little dramatic. Guess I kind of get the voice of Violet because it is modern. So it's something where, like, if you're brand new to fantasy, like you've literally never read fantasy before and you've only read contemporary, like books, contemporary books, and you pick up Fourth Wing, and might be less intimidating because it's not Game of Thrones. It's very modern. Um, with a lot of like modern quips and just the way that she speaks and her internal thoughts. It's very much like how people talk on TikTok, or at least how I talk because I don't actually have TikTok. From little bits here and there that be on the internet. It's like how Gen Z, I'll say, seem to speak to each other. So in that way, I think it's appealing to the crowd. And that was probably deliberately. That being said, as a book and left desired, as a romantasy, be desired. But there's the main dude, Zayden, and Zayden is like the fantasy romantic baddie, like a bad boy. He's the guy every chick wants. He's very much Kylo Ren and Zuko coded. Literally Kylo Ren coded though, because doesn't he have like a scar on his face even? And then he has like the relic tattoos down his neck, and he has exactly like the black swoopy hair, and he's big. So that's literally all I imagined the entire time was just Kylo Ren. And so I liked that. I liked that he therefore Kylo Ren coded. That is like my thing. So I always was going to I could never fully hate Zayden. I never be disinterested was on the page. However, is he a green flag? Oh, he's kind of an idiot and he's kind of incompetent. I cannot stand that. I like with Kylo Ren and Zuko, they're both like they're competent, but they have a flaw, and it's their hot-headedness. It's their that they're prone to negative emotions that gets in the way of them being even better leaders, better fighters, better just better people in general, right? But they do have some level of competence. Like with Zuko, it's with fire bending, and with Kylo, it's with the Force. Like they're, but with Zayden, he just doesn't seem to be that at what he does. We're told over and over again that he's very powerful, but we never witness it. And I guess like in the fact that they would spar on the mat, and when he would spar other people, he would always win. Guess, but he also seemed to Violet and other members of his team astray, and the fact that he's part of this whole coup and he like leaves Violet out of it and it leads to issues later on. I don't know. He just seemed to be kind of an idiot. So I don't like that. I don't like dum dums. I personally together. Mwah, mwah, mwah. And then I have a note for Shadow and Bone, but literally I'm just thinking of the Darkling, and I'm like, the Dark is just Bones, Zuko, and Kylo Ren, like literally tall, pale, dark, swoopy, extremely competent. Um, and he has like the whole shadow power thing, which is always coded as I don't know if you guys can hear there's like thunder outside, but that's always coded as like the sexy power is if you can control darkness, then you're the sexy one. So I was always disappointed that I don't even remember what the main chick's name is in Shadow and Bone. That the main chick and the Darkling didn't get together, and I think it's because the Darkling was just too a bad guy, so it couldn't happen. It kind of gets there like at peace each other, but they don't get together. But whenever they flirt and whenever they're in the same room and they have to interact with each other, that's when that series was most interesting and the most entertaining. So it always frustrated me when it was like, why are you keeping me and the audience away from the more interesting dynamics? That's the thing. That's what I really like about hate is that it tends to be really interesting because there's inherent conflict. Um, like, well, I want them to be together. I don't know. I guess they don't have to be together. The most people on the page and the most dynamics on the page. And so it frustrates me. Authors have that, writers like have that, and then they refuse to work with that, and they would just refuse to give the audience what they want, which is more of these characters interacting. But anyway, before I go and therefore let you guys go, let me show you my little book haul as of lately. I don't want to like make the screen wobbly. So I have a nice little mix of nonfiction and fiction. I'll just go by order of which these stack. So off we have 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do by Amy Morman. So this was definitely, I've never heard of this book before. I've never heard of it before. I just saw it on the and was like, well, interesting. Maybe this will be good. And it lists all the 13 things on the back. And I was like, oh, these are really interesting because don't do. So, like, don't waste your time feeling sorry for yourself. Don't give away your power. Don't away from change. I am very much into improvement and self development. I know it can be to, you don't want to be bogged with too much of that information. I like to have something at least once a few years ago. I did Atomic Habits. I've also been talking about self development, improvement, uh, Hormozy and Layla Hormozy. If you guys know about them, they're pretty big. So you've probably seen them or their shorts running around, and they focus a lot on us. And I'm a small business myself on top of having this social media platform and inspiring for me. So it's kind of, even though this is not like business related, kind of leaned into something we're saying mostly about like a handle on your own emotions and then the whole giveaway hour. So that is rule 2. So I'm on rule 3. Liked that because I had some drama happen this summer. I've seen that video where I do a little bit. I get into a little bit the drama that I experienced this, and I definitely did not by this rule, and I definitely gave away my power to ex friends of mine by just about them all the time and talking about them all the time. And that was me processing a kind of like traumatic situation, but all it was just me giving them more energy they deserved and giving the situation more energy it deserved than just moving on from it. So anyway, this has been helpful given all of that. This I just because it's spooky season. Look at that, guys. It's so beautiful. So it's called Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brahm. Love, 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 love that the author named Brahm and the way that it's spaced out. Like this is just a wonderful book in a while, like just so stunning. And then it also has, yeah, spooky is. It also deals with one of my favorite topics, which is the intersection of religion and fantasy. So, basically, there's a devil or a devil character. I don't know if it is devil or if it's just like a monstrous creature. I don't know if he's inherently evil, but the colonists call him Slewfoot, demon, devil, um, and then to the main character, recently widowed outcast, alone and vulnerable in her pious village. He is the only one to for help. Together, they ignite a battle, pagan and Puritan. That alone, that line alone, I was like, well done, home with me. One that threatens to destroy the entire village, leaving but the ashes and bloodshed in its wake. So yeah, the conflict between, oh my god, absolute. Oop, I know the light's in the way. Oh, but just stunning illustration. So cool. This seems to fall under creature lore or like a creature heavy book. So it just checks off a lot of boxes for me that I'm super interested in. Oh, I also got this one today, and I talked about this guy in a video when I mentioned books that were coming out and fantasy books that were coming out in 2025. And I remember the like what this was about. Between the cover being so beautiful, being what it was about, I was like, wow, this might be an absolute perfect book for me. It takes place in a cathedral and it has to do with a girl where she's very pious, being plagued by these dreams that but they're horrible and violent and there's a knight to come in and he's supposed to like help the cathedral girls, but he's not religious and doesn't take any of it seriously. And they, I think, have a love to hate situation, but also it's just a cool setting to have it in a cathedral and spooky kind of religious prophecies. So again, because of the of religion and fantasy and also romantic, it's just right up my alley, and I'm super excited to crack into that. But I'll probably save that a few months from now. I need to get to my like spooky. And then we have some nonfiction. So this is the reinvention of the human body, or sorry, Michelangelo and the reinvention of the human body by James Hall. And so this guy just talks about Michelangelo, but kind of Michelangelo's focus, like deep, intense focus, even though he's a master of a lot of different crafts, right? Because he's a sculptor, a sculpturist, a painter, does architecture. If you guys can hear the thunder, uh, and an uh, illustrator, so he can draw law, but he focuses on the male body, on the male form, and he has an obsession with the male form. And he kind of goes through that. And by going through that, he also talks about my history. So I am an artist by trade. So that alone, I find really interesting to me, but also people are so creative to the session and what makes them the best of I am fascinated by like the same type of drive that someone like Michelangelo feels like literally the best is the same thing that I see in someone like Taylor Swift. Interesting to have those two, at least, and I'm just like keeping them in my own mind, but those two like contrasting points of some who's obsessive in the past and then somebody I can see right now that's obsessive currently and how that manifests into like amazing art, but also, yeah, I don't know, like I said, I just started reading it. So we'll see where that goes. It's one of those things where I of it. I have that issue with nonfiction, but I like the idea of reading and finishing it. And then this is something that I've been reading every morning, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, but it is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So if you don't, he is a Roman emperor, but I'm like, he might be called something else, a Caesar. I don't know. I should know this. I'm literally at the intro. I should know. I get it mixed up with other titles, but of the most he is the most powerful person of his era, and he's also dealing with terrible things. He's basically dealing with the beginning of the downfall of the Roman Empire. And there's like there's plagues, there's wars, there's betrayal, there's all these issues, and yet he keeps a personal journal of just all these different meditations, right? Things that he's thinking about. And people are obsessed with them, especially if you're into Stoicism and Stoic philosophy, because they're just very profound and they're interesting. And I figured maybe I should actually read this for myself and not just little quips of it on like Pinterest or something, but actually read it in full. Um, right with Emperor, thank you. Yeah, yeah. So an emperor. And I'm been reading a little bit of it every morning. And of course, there's some of it that feels extremely relevant and something that I can incorporate almost immediately into my everyday life. And then some of it, not necessarily, but it's still really interesting because you get to he didn't write this published. I don't think he ever that these thoughts would become a book, let alone one that someone's reading thousands of years later. So one of the most interesting things that's not necessarily immediately relevant, but he talks about the humans' relationship to the gods, how the gods are so much bigger than us. It's just fascinating because I know for me and modern culture and me living in the Midwest, I'm so used to, even though I didn't grow up in a religious household, I'm so used to moving through the world, a Christian world, right? Like America's a Christian nation. I'm in the Midwest. I'm surrounded by Christians. So even if I wasn't raised that way, I just know so about it and view the lens often in like a through a Christian light, whether I know it or not. And so it's interesting where to kind of get that perspective, but with polytheism and the Roman gods, um, and how, he talks about how they're bigger than us and they love us and they want the best for humanity and they wouldn't put us here on earth if we weren't supposed to achieve greatness. So just having that sort of that like lived experience because people don't generally believe, like truly believe in something like the Roman, like the Roman gods, the Roman pantheon anymore. Maybe a few here and there, but not en masse, which I think makes it more difficult to believe in general if your culture doesn't believe in it and if people in power don't believe in it. But here you have somebody who is in power who doesn't believe in it. And so it just gives such a different insight, a more tangible insight into that sort of worldview. On top of things like, you know, as much as you want to sleep in, you should get out of bed in the morning because you were made for greatness, that sort of thing. So I've been really enjoying it's been part of my routine down and open up some meditations and try to start my day thinking of something bigger than myself, especially, yeah, I guess just the fact that this was legacy where I'm like, wow, I guess if patients didn't exist, I'm not sure I would really know that much about Marcus Aurelius, right? Like now I know more about him because of meditations. So it's just interesting the legacies we leave behind and how important writing can be. And writing can be some of our best legacies. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm rambling a lot and it's raining and it's cozy and now I want to curl up with one of my books and I've been talking for what feels like 1,000 years, but I'm so grateful that I had as many people and as many as you guys like tune in as you did. This was really fun and I can't wait to do more of this with you. Like I said, I'm going to do multiple live streams a week. So one, like I said earlier in the live stream of this stream, I want to do like a Claire's Creative Corner where we can all work on our projects together for maybe a few hours. And then one that's more chatty like this where we're just blah, 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 blah. So yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. And I will see you in my next live stream and my next video and my next podcast. Right. Prints or pieces. I have a very exciting announcement, but it's not ready yet. So I will say no for now, but to keep an eye out because I know that's something that has been lacking on my end. The fact that I talk about writing and books and it's such a passion of mine, but I don't have a lot of material out there. I recognize that as an issue and it's an issue that will be rectified very, very, very shortly. So I will say for sure before the end of this year. Let's just go ahead and say that. But thank you so much for asking. Um, Yay, thank you so much. Yeah, it will be, you will not miss it when it's announced. Let's just say that. But anyway, I'm starting to burn up too with my ring light. So I will see you guys in a later video.